So for years I've been getting the suggestion to make a video just outright telling you who my favorite musicians are. No big history lessons on them, no analysis, just who do you like the most. And this recommendation has always confused me a little bit because, like, you watch my videos already, I'm sure you have a pretty good idea of who I like and dislike. But I get it, I don't make a video on every artist that I love. Truth be told, I haven't made videos on a majority of my favorite musicians, so here we go. My favorite musicians of all time. I thought it would be more fun to make a tier list out of them so you can see the different levels of who I really like versus who I really love, and I'm doing a top 50 because if I didn't set a limit, we'd be here all day. And something very crucial to note before I start, I promise you this list is not going to be some super enlightening thing where you find a bunch of musicians you've never heard of. I like talking about smaller musicians, but I'm listing my personal favorites. I'm not trying to make a list that's gonna make me seem like some hip, all-knowing music nerd. These are just the bands, singers, and rappers that have been most important to me in my life. I'd love to hear your list in the comments, but this is my list. One last thing to reiterate, this is not a ranking of quality whatsoever. It's a ranking of how much their music connects to me and how much I get out of it personally. With all that out of the way, we're starting off with Angel Olsen. Super talented singer-songwriter, very consistent in her releases. I've seen her live a couple times and she's unbelievable. I don't have a huge emotional connection with her music, but it's great stuff. Next up is Elliott Smith. Easily one of the musicians that tugs at my heartstrings the most. The emotion in his stuff is palpable, and he has some of the best albums of the 1990s. LCD SOUNDSYSTEM is definitely one of a kind, incredible instrumentation throughout their discography, and there's something playful that I love about James Murphy's voice. FISHMANS is pretty typical for the music nerd canon, but if you haven't listened to them, trust me, do it. I don't care if you don't really listen to music in other languages, I don't care if 90s dream pop isn't your forte, do it. This one might seem a little weird, but Justin Timberlake is so nostalgic for me. Justified and Future Sex Love Sounds were the albums that got me into pop music growing up, and the 2020 Experience is a great comeback album. D'Angelo is my go-to artist for anything related to neo-soul. He's arguably the best of the genre, and this is a prime example of why me making this video was a good idea. I virtually never talk about D'Angelo or neo-soul, and I love it. MITSKI is one of the highest quality, most innovative musicians of the 2010s, having these wide contrasts between cute, catchy pop songs and then eerie, existential nightmares all on the same album is so fascinating to me. Young Thug is one of the most boundary-pushing rappers of the 21st century. He's a prime example of someone doing precisely whatever they want to do, and I love watching him move hip-hop forward one album at a time. Killer Mike and LP Run the Jewels are some of my favorite voices in the rap game. Their discography is pretty flawless, and their energy is top-notch. Bill Withers is one of the smoothest men to ever walk this earth. His voice is like butter, he's behind some of the greatest songs ever made, and if you've never done a deep dive into his music, I highly recommend his first few albums. Janelle Monáe is the change that I want to see in the world. So dynamic, so creative, and her talent seemingly knows no bounds. The Weeknd is an interesting one because when I ranked his albums, I realized that I don't exactly love most of them, but the trilogy mixtapes were huge for my taste developing, and After Hours was a very good return to form, in my opinion. The Beach Boys are absolutely singular, and they're behind some of the best songs ever made. God Only Knows, Wouldn't It Be Nice, Good Vibrations, and the list goes on. Though my interest in Brockhampton has faded significantly since the year of the Saturation trilogy, they certainly made their mark on this period of my life. And hey, without them, I might not have ever made this channel. James Blake's Self-Titled is one of my favorite albums ever, and I can't even begin to explain how important it is to me and my love of music. I think as a whole, his discography might leave a little bit to be desired, but I really do love his distinct voice and style. Phoebe Bridgers, probably the musician on this tier list with the smallest body of work, but Stranger in the Alps and now Punisher have both hit me so hard, so quickly. Her melancholy melancholic poetry is soul-crushing. Besides one guy that you'll see later in this list, I think Denzel Curry is the most consistent rapper of the 2010s. He's never put out a bad project, and honestly, I don't even know if there's a bad song by him. WEEZER is obviously a band of very high highs and low lows. Blue and Pinkerton are rightfully described as some of the best rock albums of the last few decades, but White also has a very special place in my heart. Such a fascinating album for summertime. Bob Dylan is, well, Bob Dylan. Arguably the greatest storyteller of all time, king of folk music, and there are few musicians that get me feeling as introspective as Dylan does. And yeah, again, Prince is Prince, probably the coolest human being ever, countless hit records, and honestly, him being this low is just because I haven't listened to his discography enough, because when I do listen to him, I can't listen to anything else for weeks. A Tribe Called Quest, probably more than anyone else, made me fall in love with hip-hop at a young age. The Low End Theory is one of the more easygoing, fun rap albums you'll ever hear, and then the fact that they could make something like We Got It From Here 25 years later is insane. Quite possibly the most creative musician on this list, BJÖRK is unique to say the least. Every single album she releases has its own little world. There's just no competing with somebody that can successfully reinvent themselves every time they make music. It's absurd. Yeah, Morrissey's an idiot, but God, finding the Smiths was another one of these vital, life-changing moments that I keep bringing up. All of their albums are obnoxiously good, and they might define the word bittersweet better than just about anyone else. Joni Mitchell is one of my favorite storytellers ever. There's nothing like listening to vapid, fun music for a little while, then turning on Blue, remembering how shockingly spiritual music can be, and crying myself to sleep. I've been listening to Billy Joel's greatest hits like once a month since I was 10 years old. Vienna, Leave a Tender Moment Alone, She's Always a Woman, all some of my favorite tracks ever. Alright, I said that Prince is the coolest human being ever, but Marvin Gaye is also the coolest human being ever. One of those musicians whose stuff is incomparable to pretty much every album you've ever heard. It's on another level. Daft Punk was my introduction to anything resembling electronic or house music. Discovery and Random Access Memories are perfect, and when I bought my first pair of good headphones, I threw on Touch and cried like a baby. The Strokes were super influential for the 2000s, and it's crazy how, right now, they're just as good as they've ever been. They go from having one of the best debut albums ever to 20 years later having my favorite album of the year. Charli XCX is redefining pop music right now. Her electronic, futuristic flair is infectious to say the least, and I really think she's one of the most important people in the industry. Kid Cudi is the musical equivalent of a warm hug. Man on the Moon is an all-time favorite for me, his contributions to Kids See Ghost are gorgeous, and his lyrics are so pure and real. Vampire Weekend is a very fun group that makes for pretty easy listening. With that being said, it's cool to see how many influences you can feel within their music, even though it comes across as that easy, fun-loving indie pop rock. Stevie Wonder is my pick for the #1 best musician in history. He has several of the greatest albums ever made, he can make you feel every emotion under the sun, and it's no surprise that you can take college classes on his discography. Whitney Houston might be my pick for the #1 best vocalist ever. When we're talking about individual tracks, she has classics upon classics, and she too can go from entertaining songs that make you want to get up and dance, and then some emotionally draining heartbreakers. Jay-Z was a major reason why I fell in love with hip-hop. For a long time, I considered him to be the greatest rapper of all time, and with his catalog, The Blueprint, The Black Album, Reasonable Doubt, 444, I think most people would at least put him in their top 5 or top 10. Lauryn Hill's music puts me in a different world. Her storytelling is remarkable, I think she's the best rap singer, sing-rapper, whatever you want to call it, ever, and her Unplugged album is an all-time favorite of mine. Fleetwood Mac have 2 of my favorite rock albums ever. Between the self-titled and Rumors, you get deep, touching tracks like Landslide, hard-hitting anthems anthems like The Chain, and one of my favorite songs ever in Dreams. Carly Rae Jepsen is my favorite pop singer ever. Emotion is a one-of-a-kind perfect pop album that exudes so much joy, and I love it so much. Bon Iver came to me at a very big turning point in my life. I was having tunnel vision with my obsession with hip-hop, then I listened to For Emma forever ago, and I had a newfound connection with stuff that was much softer, prettier, and more subtle. Andre 3000 and Big Boi, OUTKAST, are two of the best to ever do it. There's such a fascinating dynamic between the two of them. Andre is an eccentric storyteller, and Big Boi delivers some audacious verses. ATLiens, Aquemini, and Stankonia in one discography is unfair. Alright, Death Grips, where do I even begin? They helped open my eyes to a whole new world of music without any limits whatsoever. Between songs like Tachyon, Hacker, Beware, and Black Paint, their stuff pumps me up in a way that nothing else does. Amy Winehouse has one of my favorite voices ever. Such a gorgeous, sweet tone, and let me just say, Back to Black is unreal. If there's one album suggestion you take away from this video, even if you've already heard it, just listen to Back to Black sometime soon. There's a pretty good case for Radiohead being the greatest band of all time. They've gone on an 8-album run where if any other band made 2 or 3 of these projects, they'd be regarded as top-notch. But this beautiful, depressing nightmare of a group has made 8 fantastic albums, and that is jaw-dropping. Danny Brown is my third favorite rapper ever. He can be so strange, so goofy, but he can also make some of the most intense, real hip-hop you've ever heard. There are few people that have the kind of range that Danny has. Sufjan Stevens is my go-to for a good cry, whenever I need some self-reflection, or if I just want to be in awe of an unbelievably talented singer-songwriter. Some of the arrangements on Illinois and Carrie and Lowell are beyond perfect. John Mayer is somebody I've been obsessed with for years. Obviously, he's a skilled guitarist, but there's something about his voice that I think is really underrated. He doesn't have amazing technical vocals, but he puts his heart and soul into every verse and chorus. Hot take, Kendrick Lamar is already the greatest rapper of all time. Even just between Good Kid, Mad City to Pimp a Butterfly and Damn, those feel like once-in-a-lifetime projects. He is a poet, a storyteller, and he's truly one of a kind. There will never be another Kendrick Lamar. It feels dumb to even try to give you some kind of background on the Beatles, so I'll give you this little anecdote. The White Album was played for me non-stop growing up, and subconsciously, I think that might have done more for my taste than anything else I've ever encountered. Frank Ocean is one of the geniuses working in the industry today. Blonde, Endless, Channel Orange, Nostalgia Ultra, all fantastic. I've never heard a bad song by him, and his music is always worth the wait. I will admit that quality-wise, modern baseball isn't even close to pretty much every inclusion on this list, but this is my favorite musicians ever, and these guys mean the world to me. I've connected with their dramatic, relatable stuff in a way that has only been topped by one man. And yeah, Kanye West is my all-time favorite musician. His sub-genre bending within the hip-hop realm is awe-inspiring. He's made a good chunk of my favorite albums ever, and regardless of the solo stuff he's dropped post-2016, I will forever be grateful for how he's changed my life for the better with his music. So this is my finished list for my top 50 personal favorite musicians of all time. Like I said, I don't think this list is revolutionary or too interesting. There's plenty of the biggest musicians of all time or the last couple of decades, but hey, it's the stuff that means the most to me. There are probably some recent names and faces that you might have expected to see, but I wanted this list to be who have I loved the most throughout my life, and it felt weird putting somebody that I started listening to last year or the year before. And then if you expected to see somebody and they're not on there, these are just my top 50. There were hundreds of contenders, but these are the ones that made the final list. Be sure to comment down below with some of your favorite musicians, and thanks for watching. Hey, thank you for watching that video. If you want to support the channel, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media at RenshawHS. You can buy my merch, support my Patreon, and thank you again. I'll see you soon.